Hey, what's up everybody? The Fish Tank Guy here, and welcome to another entry in my Pico Reef series. Today I'm going to be talking about two modifications that I think are absolutely necessary for you to do if you decide to pick up this tank. The two modifications that we're going to be doing have to do with consistent circulation. Now, the reason that that is important is because with such a small volume of water, you want to make sure that your circulation is always the same, regardless of if your water levels dip a little bit or they're a little bit higher right after you do a top off. This is because you need to keep your temperature the same. You need to keep your parameters the same. You want to make sure your water is always going through your filtration and your media, which is a hint to what one of the modifications are, right? So without further ado, let's take a look at them. I'll tell you what they are first, and then I'll show you how to go about doing them. The first modification is going to be sealing the slit between the two chambers. Now, this slit is located fairly high up between the chambers. However, the reason that we're doing this is because if your water levels are a little bit higher, for example, you just did a top off and you filled the tank up, it will allow water to go past your filtration media, which is not something you want to have happening. So if you fill this slit up with silicone like we're going to do in this modification, all your water will always go through your filtration media, regardless of how full or how empty your tank is. So that is the first modification that we want to do. The second modification is going to be the output tube mod. Now, the reason that you need to do this modification is because without it, the water in the small chamber here is basically stagnant. So if you want to use that chamber to house your heater, like I did and do want to do, you have to do this modification. The reason being, when I first put the heater in this chamber, I would crank it up and I would notice that my display tank was still not warm enough. Well, I put my finger into the water in the first chamber and it was hot. That's because it's not circulating. So with this mod, we're gonna pop a few holes into the output tube, and that will keep that water in that first chamber from becoming stagnant, and it will always be moving and circulating, which will make your heater much more efficient. Now, there is a downside to performing this modification, and that is that you will have lower output from your pump. To me though, that's fine. I would rather have a spot for my heater that isn't in my display tank and doesn't screw up where I want to put a media basket in my larger chamber. Now, in order to get around this, we're basically going to have to put another power head of sorts into the display tank, which I was kind of anticipating anyway, so not really a big deal. But without further ado, let's take a look at the modifications and how to perform them, and hopefully I will give you guys good tips and tricks to make this an easy process for you. So for the mod to plug the slit between the two chambers, we're going to do something very similar to what we did for the slit between the chambers and the display tank. So what I'm going to use is a small piece of plastic here that I actually cut out from like a container that I got cookies from at the grocery store or something, I don't know. We're going to slide that behind and we're going to hold that in place while we fill in the slit with our silicone, okay? Now, I have some silicone kind of like piled up here. I squirted it out of the silicone gun on a piece of paper / cardboard, and I'm just going to use a flathead screwdriver and I'm going to scoop it up and I'm going to kind of smear it into the opening when I'm holding the plastic backing on the back side of it, okay? I'm gonna try to do my best here. It's kind of difficult with the camera in the way. It is by no means something you're gonna be able to do perfectly, and it's gonna be ugly at times, but just do your best, and we'll see what we got to work with here. Hopefully you guys check out this video before you get your EVO all set up, because it's a lot easier to do these modifications without the tank up and running. Now, aquarium silicone usually needs about 24 hours to cure properly, so all I'm going to do is run the tank with a little less water than I normally would. But for you, if you're doing it beforehand, that won't be a worry, and that'll be super awesome. But either way, you can definitely do this mod. It's not all that difficult at all. Now, once you're sure you have a good bead of silicone, you can actually just use your finger and run along the silicone to kind of smooth it out. You want to have a paper towel or something nearby to wipe your hand off, but that is a really good way to keep it smooth, make it look a little bit nicer. Once you have everything nice and smoothed out the way you want, you're going to want to remove the plastic backing that you had, preventing the silicone from spilling into the other chamber. Now, this is going to kind of be trial and error. You're going to want to try to take it slowly. You don't want to just rip it off the back. It'll take a lot of the silicone out with it. Usually what I like to do is sort of move it upwards slowly. This will keep the silicone in the slit while also getting you away from it with that plastic backing. But like I said, if you were to rip it right off the back, a lot of the silicone will go with it, and then you'll have your opening there again, which is what we don't want. Now, once you have your silicone bead in place, you can check it to make sure you don't have any openings or gaps. If needed, you can run your flathead screwdriver along the bead on both sides to fill in any gaps and try to clean it up to the best of your ability. So there you go for the mod between the two chambers. Now, the modification for the output tube is much easier. There are one of two ways of doing it. The first is you can use a pair of scissors to notch holes into the tube, which is what I did, but what I would not recommend doing. And the second method would be to use a small nail or a larger pin and poke holes into the tube. The only thing that I would recommend doing is distributing them evenly if you can. You'll see here that my one hole is here, my other is here, and my other is here. Those three, I tried to space them evenly apart. And I also put them into different sides of the tube, so we have water coming out from each side. Now, I tried to stay away from putting them too close to the top and too close to the bottom. And the other thing that I would recommend is don't put too many holes in it to start. You can always add holes later, but you can't seal them up very easily. So if you want, you could just start off with 2 and see how the temperature in your aquarium is versus what your heater is set at. If it's pretty close, maybe you're good. If it's still pretty off, then you're going to want to add a couple more to your tube. It's all based on, what you're seeing in your system and what you decide to do. And as you can see after the mod, the water in the first chamber is moving and is no longer stagnant. This is exactly what you want, especially if your heater is going to be placed in this small chamber. So, there you have it. Once again, I'm the Fish Tank Guy. I would like to thank you so much for checking out my channel, checking out the Pico Reef series, and if you have any comments or questions or opinions, please leave them in the comment section below. And until a future Fish Tank Guy video, I will see you guys soon.